A text from my mother-in-law asking for $1,500. I was horrified, uncovering my husband's terrible secret. 3 days later, I left his entire family penniless, with their suitcases on the street. A sudden New York downpour lashed against the windows of my office on the 18th floor of a skyscraper in Manhattan's financial district. I, Marina Miller, was completely immersed in the figures of the quarterly financial report. As the CFO of a large import-export holding company, I was accustomed to pressure, but I couldn't have imagined that a real storm was brewing not outside my window or in my reports, but quietly waiting its turn on my phone, silently resting on my desk. The screen of my phone lit up, notifying me of a new message in iMessage. I glanced at it quickly and saw the sender's name, Susan Peterson. This was my husband's mother. Our relationship wasn't particularly warm, but we'd never had any major arguments. Mostly because I always behaved tactfully and generously helped her financially. I opened the message. A short but commanding phrase cut into my eyes. Marinachka, urgently send me $15,000. I need to pay the loan interest this month. The bank has already called. They're rushing me. Don't delay, or they'll add a penalty. I frowned, rereading the message again and again. $15,000 in interest. My husband, David, and I lived in a luxury rented apartment in Tribeca. We had never purchased our own home and hadn't discussed taking out such a large bank loan where the monthly interest alone would reach such a monstrous sum. I thought Susan Peterson must have sent it to the wrong person, or her account had been hacked by scammers. Trying to remain calm, I typed a reply. Susan Peterson, hello. You must have made a mistake. David and I haven't taken out any bank loans. Please check again. Not a minute passed before my phone rang furiously. It was my mother-in-law. As soon as I answered, her shrill, hurried voice boomed through the receiver, so loud I had to pull the phone slightly away from my ear. How could I be mistaken? The bank called me, gave me your name, and said that the interest payment for the loan to purchase the apartment in the Pinnacle Residences is due. David said you would take care of it. So why are you playing dumb now? Marina, do you want our apartment to be seized? My head swam. The Pinnacle Residences. What apartment? I took a deep breath, trying to calm down and not shout into the phone. Susan Peterson, please calm down and listen to me. I officially state that I have never purchased an apartment in the Pinnacle Residences. I'm at work now. I'll call you back later. I decisively ended the conversation, even though my mother-in-law continued to shout something on the other end. My intuition told me something was terribly wrong. Using my professional skills as a CFO, I immediately logged into my credit bureau account and my banking app to check my credit history. My hands began to tremble when I saw the information on the computer screen. A mortgage loan for $1.4 million, issued exactly 1 year ago. The collateral was a luxurious 3-bedroom apartment in the Pinnacle Residences. And, most horrifying of all, the borrower on the loan agreement and the owner of the apartment was none other than Marina Miller. I frantically recalled what had happened a year ago. David had brought me a thick stack of papers and said he needed my signature to formalize a guarantee for his promotion to department head. Trusting my husband and being engrossed in a new project, I signed the documents without reading every page, only glancing at the first few sheets with headings about personnel procedures. It turned out that hidden among these seemingly innocuous papers were a mortgage loan agreement and a power of attorney for real estate purchase. Anger boiled in my chest like a flame in the wind. I wasn't just deceived. It was done by the person I shared my bed with. David had fraudulently used my name and my impeccable financial reputation to take out a $1.4 million loan to buy an apartment. But for whom? We were still living in a rented place. Who was living in that apartment then? I immediately called a friend who worked in the loan department of the very bank that issued the loan. A few minutes of checking later, her answer hit me like a bucket of ice water poured over my head. Marina, your husband arranged everything. The documents for the apartment list, Ian Sokolov and Susan Peterson Sokolov as the permanent residents. I thought you were buying the apartment for your husband's brother, so I signed everything without question. Everything fell into place. David had tricked me into signing a loan agreement to buy a luxurious apartment, not for us, but for his lazy and jobless younger brother, Ian, as a wedding gift, and to move his greedy mother there. This entire year, I had slaved away at work, while David secretly siphoned money from our joint account, which I naively believed was our savings fund for the future, to pay the loan interest for his brother's nest. I slammed my laptop shut and gathered my belongings. Today, I would leave work early. I needed explanations, and most importantly, I wanted to see the true faces of those I called my family. I returned home after dark. Our rented apartment, though comfortable, still felt like a temporary abode, nothing like the luxury I imagined in a $1.4 million apartment. David sat on the couch with the remote in his hand, smirking as he watched some comedy show. Seeing me, he rushed over with the same fake warmth as always to take my bag. "Darling, you're back? Tired from work? I bought your favorite rotisserie chicken." I pushed his hand away, threw my bag onto the sofa, and looked him directly in the eyes. My icy stare froze the smile on his face. He instinctively stepped back. His voice became uncertain, though he still tried to pretend everything was fine. "What? What's wrong, honey? Problems at work?" I didn't beat around the bush. I took out my phone, opened Susan Peterson's message and the screenshot of the loan information, and shoved it in his face. "Explain this $1.4 million debt. Whose apartment is this in the Pinnacle Residences? And why is your mother demanding that I pay the interest?" David's face changed color, from flushed to deathly pale, then to crimson. He realized that hiding the truth was no longer possible. Instead of showing remorse, he took a deep breath and changed his tone, revealing his true, cowardly, and arrogant nature. He flopped onto the couch, crossed his legs, and spoke defiantly. "Well, since you already know everything, I'll be direct. Yes, I used your name to take out a loan for the apartment. But understand, I have bad credit because of that failed business a couple of years ago. I wouldn't have been able to get such a loan. You have a high salary, perfect documents. What does it cost you to help family? You're not losing anything." I felt the blood rush to my head. "Help family? You tricked me into signing documents, saying it was for your job, and now you say, help? Who lives in that apartment? Your brother Ian and your mother, isn't that right?" David shrugged and casually replied, "Well, yes, Ian is getting married to Anna soon. He needs a decent apartment to impress her parents. You're the elder sister-in-law. You should help your younger brother. We're family. Why such petty calculations?" "Petty calculations?" I scoffed, holding back tears of resentment. "You've burdened me with a $1.4 million debt, with interest payments of $15,000 a month. Where did you get the money to pay it all this year? You took it from our joint savings account." David remained silent, avoiding my gaze. That silence was the cruelest answer. I rushed to the bedroom, opened the safe, and checked the savings passbook. Empty. $170,000. My hard-earned savings of 3 years, which I had put aside for a child, had vanished. I hurled the closed passbook at his feet. "Where's my $170,000? What did you do with it?" David jumped up. His voice became sharper to drown out the voice of reason. "I spent it on renovations and furniture for that apartment. Do you think you buy an apartment and can move in right away? It needed to be furnished with expensive furniture, to be up to par. Don't be so selfish. When Ian gets on his feet, he'll pay you back everything." I looked at the man before me and felt disgust and alienation. He wasn't just a liar. He was a parasite who shamelessly lived off his wife to provide for his family. He considered my hard work an endless ATM for his relatives' vanity. "David Sokolov, listen to me carefully," I hissed, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "I am not a printing press or a milking cow for your family. The apartment is in my name. The debt is in my name. If you love playing games by using others, don't blame me if I burn all the bridges." David smirked defiantly. "And what will you do?" "My mother and brother live in the apartment. They have the keys. Are you going to throw them out on the street? Do you have the guts to commit such an immoral act against your mother-in-law and brother-in-law? The whole society will condemn you, call you a heartless sister-in-law." His challenge was the last straw. He thought that because of some imaginary reputation, because of the label of a cultured family, I would silently pay this $1.4 million debt. He was wrong. I am Marina Miller. I achieved everything myself. I know the value of the money I earn, and I have never allowed anyone to humiliate me, even if it's my husband. Fine, we'll see if I have the guts or not. I went to my room, slammed the door, and locked it. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought through every step in the upcoming battle for my rights and my honor. At that moment, my marital feelings for David died completely. The next morning, I took half a day off and went to Andrew Parker's law firm. Andrew was my classmate, and now he was a well-known attorney specializing in property disputes and family law. Sitting in his air-conditioned office, I held a cup of hot coffee, but inside, I felt frozen. I told Andrew the whole story, showing him copies of the documents I had managed to obtain from the bank. Andrew read carefully, his thick eyebrows furrowed and relaxed. He placed the folder on the table and looked at me with a confident gaze. Marina, in this case, you hold all the cards, despite the fact that David fraudulently made you sign the documents. Legally, the deed is registered solely in your name, Marina Miller. The loan agreement is also in your name. This means you have full rights to dispose of this property. But his family lives there now, I asked anxiously. Their belongings are there too. If I want to reclaim or sell the apartment, will there be problems? Andrew smirked with the confidence of a man who knows the law. Problems, of course, mostly in the form of their resistance, but from a legal standpoint, they are unlawfully occupying your property. If you did not give consent, you, as the sole owner, have the right to sell, gift, lease, or evict anyone from your apartment. The fact that David invested joint money in renovations or paid interest is a civil dispute that will be resolved during a divorce. But for now, the apartment is yours. Andrew adjusted his glasses and continued, you have two options. First, sue David for fraud, but that will be a long and complex process due to the marital relationship. Second, use your rights as owner to deal with the apartment first, cutting off the source of financial problems, and then proceed with the divorce. I quickly understood. A $1.4 million debt with a floating interest rate was a terrible burden. Every day of delay meant I was paying interest for those living at my expense. I couldn't wait years for a court to hear a fraud case. I choose to sell, I firmly said. I need to close this loan immediately to get rid of the debt. I want nothing to do with this property. Wise decision, Andrew nodded. Sell at a discount for a quick sale. Given the location in the Pinnacle residences, if the price is good, a buyer will be found immediately. Just entrust it to a real estate agent. When there's a showing, if his family starts to cause trouble, call me, building security, or even the police. Leaving the lawyer's office, I felt a slight relief. I immediately contacted a reputable real estate agency. I listed the apartment for $1.35 million, which was about $50,000 below market price. My only requirement was a quick closing. I took on all costs for the transfer. Just 2 days after the listing was published, my phone was ringing off the hook. The agent reported that there was a very interested young couple who wanted to view the apartment and were ready to make a deposit immediately if the apartment matched the photos. I scheduled them for 6 p.m. the next day. It was the perfect time to start my show. I didn't warn David or his family. I wanted them to face the harsh reality face to face, right in the place they considered their eternal nest. That evening, I put on a sharp black business suit and applied bold makeup. I looked at myself in the mirror. This was no longer the obedient wife, but a creditor coming to demand justice. I called David and lied, saying I was being urgently sent on a business trip for several days, so he wouldn't suspect anything and wouldn't interfere. I drove to the Pinnacle residences with a heart full of determination. In the trunk lay a folder with legal documents, the original deed, the loan agreement, and my ID. I took a deep breath and entered the luxurious lobby of the building. The real estate agent and the couple of buyers were already waiting for me. Hello, Marina Miller. This is Anthony and Olivia. They would like to view the apartment. The young agent quickly introduced them. I smiled and shook their hands. Hello, my apologies for any inconvenience. Some acquaintances are temporarily living in the apartment, so it might be a bit untidy, but I guarantee legal clarity. I am the sole owner and can close the deal tomorrow if needed. Yes, for us, the documents and the condition of the apartment are key, Anthony cheerfully replied. We entered the elevator together. The number 25 lit up. My heart was pounding wildly, not from fear, but from anticipation of the moment when I would tear off the masks of these greedy people. The elevator doors opened. A long corridor led to apartment 256. I confidently strode forward. The click of my heels on the marble floor sounded resolute. Today, this cursed apartment would return to its rightful place. I stopped in front of the door of apartment 256 and pressed the doorbell. From inside came loud laughter, a blaring television, and a thick smell of food that could be felt even in the hallway. It seemed they were in the midst of some celebration. Ian, David's brother, opened the door. He was in just shorts, with a can of beer in his hand and a flushed face. Seeing me, the smile on his face died, replaced by surprise and annoyance. "Oh, sister-in-law, what brings you here?" David said you were on a business trip. I didn't answer his question, coldly pushed him aside, and entered, gesturing for the agent and buyers to follow me. "Come in, don't be shy." In the spacious living room, Susan Peterson, with her feet up on the couch, was watching TV and munching on fried chicken. Ian's wife, Anna, was bustling in the kitchen. Seeing the crowd of strangers, my mother-in-law flinched, hastily lowered her feet, and stared at me with wide eyes. "What is this? Marina, who did you bring into the house? Can't you see the family is having dinner?" she shouted in the tone of a mother-in-law used to being indulged. I stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed, and announced loudly, "Allow me to introduce you. Susan Peterson, Ian, Anna. This is Anthony and Olivia. They've come to view the apartment for purchase. Please continue your dinner. They will just look at the layout and condition." My words sounded like a bomb exploding. Susan Peterson dropped a chicken leg on the floor. Ian dropped his beer can with a clatter, and Anna looked at me in bewilderment. "What did you say? Sell? What apartment are you going to sell? This is Ian's apartment. What right do you have to sell it?" Susan Peterson rushed at me, pointing her finger in my face and spluttering. Ian also lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. "Are you crazy? Who allowed you to bring strangers into my home? Get out of here!" Anthony and Olivia nervously retreated behind the agent. I remained unperturbed. I calmly took out the deed from my bag and held it up for all to see. "Look carefully. Deed from the county recorder's office. Owner, Marina Miller. There is no mention of Ian Sokolov's name here, and no mention of Susan Peterson Sokolov's name." I looked directly into Ian's eyes. My voice turned to steel. "I bought this apartment, taking out a loan from the bank in my name. You haven't contributed a single dime, yet you shamelessly enjoyed life at the expense of my hard work. Now I can no longer pay this loan. I am selling it to pay off the debt to the bank. This is my right." Hearing this, Susan Peterson wailed, collapsed to the floor, and began to beat her thighs. "Oh my God! My daughter-in-law is taking away my son's home, throwing his mother out on the street. Good people, look at this." Ian, seeing his mother's tears, became even more furious. He tried to snatch the document from my hands. "Give that here. David bought this apartment for me. You're just a front. Give it back." I deftly stepped back. The agent, a tall young man, stepped between me and Ian, protecting me and the clients. "Young man, calm down. Assault is against the law," he warned. "I don't care. This is my home. I have the right," Ian roared and hit the agent on the shoulder. The situation was out of control. The frightened buyers ran into the hallway. I realized it was useless to talk to these people. I took out my phone and dialed the number for building management and the local police precinct, which I had saved in advance. "Hello? Security? I am the owner of apartment 256. There are unauthorized persons in my apartment who are causing a disturbance, illegally occupying the residence, and attacking people. Please come up immediately and assist." Just 5 minutes later, 3 security guards and 2 police officers arrived. At the sight of the uniforms, Ian quieted down but continued to curse under his breath. Susan Peterson was still rolling on the floor, sobbing as if she had been brutally beaten. The police requested documents. I presented the deed, my ID, and the original purchase agreement. Everything was in perfect order. According to the documents, Marina Miller is the legal owner of this apartment, the police officer said, addressing the family. Please present documents confirming your right to reside here, or a lease agreement. Ian mumbled. This is an apartment my older brother bought for me. Your brother bought it, but according to the documents, Miss Miller is the owner. Legally, this is her property. If you do not have documents confirming ownership or a lease agreement, you are residing here unlawfully. Miss Miller has the right to demand that you vacate the premises. Hearing this, Susan Peterson jumped up and grabbed the police officer's arm. Officer, don't listen to her. She's a fraud. She's my daughter-in-law. This apartment was bought with my son's money. Ma'am, please calm down. We operate based on law and documents. Your family's financial disputes can be resolved in court. At this moment, the right to dispose of the apartment belongs to Miss Miller. I looked at Susan Peterson, at Ian, and clearly stated, I give you 3 days to pack your things and leave here. In 3 days, I will change the locks. If you attempt to stay, I will file a complaint for unlawful entry. In the presence of the police and security, my husband's family no longer dared to rampage. Susan Peterson silently glared at me with hatred. Ian gritted his teeth and punched the wall forcefully. Anna stood with her head down, not daring to utter a word. I apologized to the agent and promised him an additional commission. Although the showing had failed for now, I had sent them a clear signal. Marina Miller was no longer the lamb with whom they could do anything they pleased. This war had only just begun, and I had no intention of retreating. 3 days flew by quickly. As promised, I arrived, changed the locks, and officially sealed the apartment to hand it over to the real estate agents for showings. David's family had to move out and temporarily rent a shabby room in a dilapidated building on the outskirts of the city. David called me hundreds of times, sent messages with threats and insults, but I blocked him everywhere. I temporarily moved in with my parents to avoid meeting him and to prepare for the next steps. However, I underestimated the audacity and cunning of Susan Peterson and her son. On Monday morning, as soon as I entered the office, I noticed strange glances from my colleagues. They gathered in groups, whispering and pointing at me. But as soon as I walked past, they fell silent, pretending to work. I felt a sense of unease. As soon as I sat down, my assistant rushed over to me with a pale face and handed me a tablet. Marina Miller, look, a video about you is circulating online. I took the tablet, my heart pounding. On the screen was a skillfully edited video. To tragic music, Susan Peterson sat on the doorstep of a rundown house, sobbing and lamenting. Good people, look at how evil my daughter-in-law is. She and her husband tricked me into selling my home in the countryside for $150,000 to buy an apartment in New York. And now that the apartment is in her name, she's kicked my son and me out onto the street, seized the property, and left for a lover. And my son is a doormat, afraid to say a word to her, allowing his wife to walk all over him. Then Ian appeared on screen with bruises on his face, holding a fake medical report for injuries and crying. My sister-in-law had an affair with a lawyer, came home, beat me and my wife, took our apartment, and threw us out into the street in the middle of the night in the rain. The video was posted from an anonymous account, but it had already been reposted in dozens of major groups and social media channels. Below were thousands of comments, slandering me. Shameless daughter-in-law, by the look of her, a con artist. CFO stealing money from her mother-in-law. Boycott this company that employs such immoral staff. A chill ran down my spine. They had brazenly twisted everything around, playing on the sympathy of internet users who, not knowing the facts, easily fell for provocations in such dramatic family stories. The internal phone rang. It was the CEO's secretary. Marina Miller, the general manager, asks you to come to the conference room immediately. I knew what awaited me. My personal image was closely tied to the company's reputation. A CFO involved in a scandal of fraud and property seizure from her family. This was unacceptable. Entering the conference room, I felt a heavy atmosphere. Victor Thompson, the CEO, sat at the head of the table with a stern expression. Next to him sat Steve, the deputy CEO, my sworn enemy at work. Steve looked at me with a triumphant smirk, as if he had long awaited this moment. Marina Miller, I'm awaiting explanations regarding the information circulating on social media, Victor Thompson said, sliding a laptop towards me. Shareholders and partners are calling, expressing concern. The company's stock already dipped this morning due to these rumors. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. Victor Thompson, this is absolute slander and fabrication. This is my personal family conflict, in which I am the injured party. I have all legal evidence of my innocence. Steve smirked and interjected, Marinachka, where there's smoke, there's fire. The video shows real people, real events, an elderly mother crying so bitterly. You say you're a victim, but people see that your husband's family is living in a shack while you continue to drive an expensive car and live in luxury. The public isn't interested in your paperwork. They care about morality. Steve, if you're not aware of the facts, don't jump to conclusions, I retorted sharply. Victor Thompson interrupted us with a gesture. Enough. I don't care who's right or wrong in your family matters, but right now, the company's reputation has been seriously damaged. I am temporarily suspending you from work for a week to resolve this issue. If the public outcry doesn't subside in a week, I will be forced to take more stringent measures. But, Victor Thompson, I tried to object. The decision has been made. Hand over your duties to Steve. He will temporarily cover for you. I left the conference room feeling as if my world was crumbling beneath my feet, suspended from work, condemned by society, betrayed by my husband's family. But it was precisely at this moment of despair that my survival instinct awakened with new force. They wanted to play dirty media games. Fine, I would show them the power of truth and numbers. A CFO never minces words. I would provide all financial statements and emotional accounts. Let's see who would have to hang their head in shame. I picked up my phone and called Andrew. Andrew, prepare a lawsuit for defamation and help me contact the administrators of major online groups. I have a story that will turn everything upside down. I sat before my computer monitor in my old room at my parents' house. The silence was such that I could hear the clock ticking. Outside, a storm raged on social media. The torrent of baseless insults against me grew with every second, but they had chosen the wrong opponent for a war where numbers and evidence play a decisive role. As a CFO, I understood the power of transparency better than anyone. My silence in recent days was not fear, but preparation for a crushing counterattack. I began to organize files on my desktop. First, clear scans of both sides of the deed, where Marina Miller as the owner was printed in bold, with no mention of anyone else. Second, bank statements. Over the past 12 months, I highlighted in red marker all automatic debits with the payment description, mortgage loan interest payment, and correlated them with my salary dates. The flow of money from my earnings to the bank was clear as day. And most importantly, I recovered old iMessage correspondence from cloud storage. This was the dialogue with David, on the day he fraudulently made me sign the documents. He wrote, "Honey, please sign. It's for a guarantee at work. It has nothing to do with property." And his recent message, when everything came to light, "You're the elder sister-in-law. What does it cost you to help your brother with the apartment debts?" I took a deep breath and began to type harsh, measured lines on my social media page. I didn't use whining words or vulgar insults. I wrote in the cold, precise language of a financial expert. I titled the post in all caps, "The Truth About the Cursed Apartment and the Parasite Family." In the content, I immediately got to the point. I asked a rhetorical question. Does a woman whose husband fraudulently made her take out a $1.4 million loan to buy an apartment for his brother and mother, while she herself lives in a rented place, deserve to be called heartless when she decides to sell this apartment to pay off the debt? Under each point, I attached corresponding evidence in the form of images. Image 1, the deed, confirming my sole ownership. Image 2, bank statements, showing how my salary went to pay off the loan. Image 3, screenshots of David's messages, where he admits to the deception. I concluded the post with a public challenge. The apartment is mine, the loan is in my name. I paid the interest for a whole year, while my husband's family lived there for free and enjoyed life. Now I can no longer pay. Selling my property to pay off the debt to the bank is absolutely legal and ethical. If Susan Sokolov and David Sokolov continue to spread slander, I will sue them. I pressed publish. Within an hour, my post had the effect of an exploding bomb. My friends, colleagues, and business partners were the first to share it. They knew me and my character, so they immediately came to my defense. Then, major online groups and channels began reposting my message at breakneck speed. The very same armchair detectives who had been slandering me yesterday began to change their tune en masse. They analyzed the evidence I presented and saw undeniable logic. Public opinion turned 180 degrees. Thousands of comments appeared with sympathy. My God, the statements show everything. No arguing with that. Turns out the whole family conspired to trick one woman. Real thieves. Parasite Family is the perfect name for them. I watched the rapidly growing numbers of likes and shares, and my heart felt a little lighter. But I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the first step to restoring my honor. I turned off the computer and leaned back in my chair. I had to win this battle, not just for the money, but for my own dignity. 2 days after my counterattack on social media, I received a call from an unknown number. Usually, I wouldn't answer, but intuition told me this call was important. On the other end of the line was a quiet, trembling voice that I could barely hear pressing the phone to my ear. It was Anna, Ian's wife, the quiet and downtrodden sister-in-law I had seen a couple of times. Anna scheduled a meeting with me at a small coffee shop in a quiet alley, far from where her husband's family now lived. She said she had vital information for me. I arrived 15 minutes early. When Anna walked in, I barely recognized the young woman. She had lost a lot of weight. Dark circles lay under her eyes, and bruises were visible on her arm under her long sleeve. She sat opposite me, nervously clutching her hands and looking around fearfully. I ordered her an orange juice and calmly told her to relax. Calm down, drink your juice. Whatever happened, just tell me directly. No one else is here. Anna took a sip, took a deep breath, and pulled a small, worn notebook from her bag. She pushed it across to me. Marina Miller, I'm sorry. I know how terribly my husband's whole family treated you, but I'm a powerless daughter-in-law. My husband constantly beats me. I didn't dare say a word, but this time they crossed every line. I can't silently watch them destroy you. I opened the notebook. It was Susan Peterson's uneven handwriting. Pages with daily grocery expenses were interspersed with lines that chilled me to the bone. My gaze stopped on a page marked by Anna. It clearly outlined a plan. Let Marina pay the loan for now. In about 15 years, when she pays off the entire amount, the apartment's value will double. Then we'll find an excuse to make her transfer the apartment to Ian. If she doesn't agree, we'll pressure her through David, threaten divorce and asset division. A shiver ran through me. It turned out this conspiracy was not a spontaneous decision, but a long and carefully planned scheme by Susan Peterson and David. They viewed me as a cash cow to be milked dry, and then either thrown out on the street or stripped of everything I had earned. That's not all, Anna continued, her voice breaking. Turn to the last page. I was cleaning my mother-in-law's room the other day and found this notebook under her pillow. I secretly photographed it and brought you the original. I turned the page. There were records of numerous debts, among which was an item, personal loan, $170,000, taken from Marina to pay off microloan debts. I was stunned. David had not only tricked me into taking out a $1.4 million mortgage, but had also secretly used my information to take out another $170,000 loan. I knew nothing about this money, and only now did I understand why strange sums were being debited from my account monthly, which I hadn't had time to check. Your mother-in-law lost money gambling, racked up microloans, and when collectors threatened her, David, in desperation, forged your signature to take out a bank loan and pay off those debts. Anna added another shocking detail. Now they're in a corner. They want to force you to sell the apartment and give them the remaining money to pay off their debts. Otherwise, they'll make your life miserable until you're fired. I looked at Anna with sympathy and gratitude. This girl was also a victim of this rotten family. Her husband Ian was as cruel and worthless as his older brother. Thank you, Anna. I took her hand. This evidence is invaluable to me. But won't they find out you gave it to me? Anna shook her head. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I don't care anymore. Sooner or later, I'll divorce him anyway. I don't want my child to be born into this deceitful and cruel family. I just hope you can punish them so they understand what justice is. I put the notebook in my bag. My gaze became resolute. With this notebook and Anna's testimony, the nature of the case completely changed. This was no longer a civil dispute. It was an organized criminal offense. Leaving the cafe, I drove straight to Andrew's office. A heavy rain began, as if wishing to wash away all the dirt I had encountered. Andrew met me with a serious face. After listening to me and examining Susan Peterson's notebook, he put on special gloves and carefully turned the pages, as if it were evidence in a murder case. Excellent, he nodded. This notebook clearly proves the intent to seize property, and it was premeditated. Together with the forged signature on the $170,000 loan Anna told us about, we have all the grounds to open a criminal case under felony fraud and forgery charges. He immediately contacted a certified forensic document examiner for graphological expertise. 2 hours later, the result came back. The signature on the $170,000 loan agreement was forged. Despite superficial similarities, the pressure and stroke were completely different. This is enough, Marina. Andrew slapped his palm on the table. We no longer need to argue online. Now, the law will speak. The next morning, Andrew and I were at the Major Crimes Unit of the NYPD. Entering the building, I felt a sense of strictness and coldness. But this very coldness instilled in me a feeling of safety. I sat opposite the detective and calmly explained all the circumstances of the case, from the deception with the apartment documents to the discovery of the forged loan and the acts of defamation by my husband's family. Andrew sat beside me, supplementing my story with legal justifications and handing the detective a thick folder with documents: the deed, bank statements, my mother-in-law's notebook, the expert's conclusion on the forged signature, and recordings of the fabricated videos from online. The detective listened attentively and took notes, sometimes asking sharp questions to clarify details. When he got to Susan Peterson's notes about the plan to seize the apartment in 15 years, he frowned and shook his head, marveling at human greed. Your materials are very comprehensive and detailed, the detective said, closing the folder. We accept your criminal complaint. Based on the initial evidence, there are clear signs of crimes under fraud and document forgery. We will conduct an investigation and will summon all involved parties for questioning shortly. Holding the receipt of complaint, I left the office. The bright midday sun illuminated the courtyard. I took a deep breath. This complaint was a sentence for the deceitful lives of David and his family. I was no longer an obedient wife, waiting for mercy from the conscience of others. I held the scales of my own justice. You did well. Andrew clapped me on the shoulder. Now go home and rest. There will be busy days ahead when the investigation begins. Prepare yourself mentally. I nodded and offered a weak smile. I was ready. Nothing more could break me. Not even the storms that awaited me at work. My week of suspension ended. I returned to the company with the mindset of a warrior back from the front, but immediately faced a new battlefield, no less brutal. Although public opinion on social media was already on my side, at the company, Deputy CEO Steve was not missing his chance to destroy me. Entering my office, I saw my things in disarray. A group of internal control employees were rummaging through my documents. Steve supervised them with a self-satisfied smirk. Welcome back, Marina Miller, he said with fake courtesy. You're just in time. We're conducting an unscheduled audit at the request of the board of directors. I placed my bag on the table and coldly asked, Steve, as I recall, my suspension period has expired. I have not received any notification of an audit or search of my office. You are violating procedure. What procedures now, Marina Miller? Steve stepped closer and lowered his voice, but so everyone could hear. The board received an anonymous complaint. It states that you appropriated company funds and received kickbacks from suppliers to cover your enormous personal debts. A CFO deep in debt and involved in a family scandal? Who will believe in your honesty now? I looked him directly in the eyes, without flinching. I knew he was behind this anonymous complaint, He wanted to take advantage of the situation and pin all his machinations on me. He thought I was broken by family problems and had let my guard down. But he was wrong. In adversity, my mind only sharpened. Steve, I enunciated clearly, the truth is on my side. Investigate as much as you like. But I warn you, if the audit shows my innocence, I will sue you for defamation and damaging my professional reputation. And don't forget, I have all the company's financial data for the last 5 years, including some unusual entertainment expenses from the commercial department that you oversee. The smile froze on Steve's face. He understood what I was implying. Fake receipts, huge bills from luxury restaurants, which were actually bribes for partners. All of this passed through me. But I always kept copies of the original documents just in case. You don't threaten me, he stammered. His initial arrogance vanished. I'm not threatening, I'm stating a fact. I sat in my chair and turned on my computer. Continue your work. I need to get on with mine. Steve irritably waved his hand for his team to leave, throwing a parting shot. We'll see what the investigation reveals. When the door closed behind them, I breathed a sigh of relief. In truth, I was also worried. Steve was cunning and insidious. He could very well fabricate evidence against me. I knew I couldn't sit idly by. I had to act faster than him. I logged into my personal cloud storage, where I kept my career insurance, audio recordings of closed meetings, and verbal instructions from Steve that I had prudently asked to be confirmed in writing. The war in the office was no less brutal than at home, and I, Marina Miller, intended to put things in order on both fronts simultaneously. That evening, I returned tired to the small apartment I had rented after moving out of my parents' home to be closer to work. Opening the door, I smelled the familiar aroma of stewed fish and a hearty soup. A warm feeling filled my hardened heart. My mother was bustling in the kitchen, and in the living room, my father, a gray-haired man with the upright posture of a former military officer, was meticulously wiping an old fan. Mom, Dad, why did you come and not tell me? I would have met you, I exclaimed, dropping my bag and rushing to hug my mom. Mom turned. Her eyes were red. She stroked my head, just like when I was a child. We found out from the internet that you were in trouble. We called, and you kept saying you were fine. Your father and I couldn't rest. How could we sit peacefully in the countryside? Dad came over. His voice was low, but authoritative. My daughter is being wronged. How could I stand aside? I may be old, but I haven't lost my mind yet. I see who's right and who's wrong immediately. I sat down at the table with a hot dinner, and tears began to flow. All these days, I had forced myself to be strong, to fight the whole world. I had to be tough, calculating, cold. But in front of my parents, I became a small, weak girl again, in need of protection. Father placed a piece of fish on my plate, then put down his chopsticks and looked at me seriously. Marina, your mother and I talked it over. We still have a plot of land in the countryside. I think we should sell it. We'll get a couple of $100,000. We'll give you the money so you can close that loan, then get divorced, and live peacefully. No need to deal with these fraudsters. Hearing this, I burst into tears even more. My parents had worked their whole lives. That plot of land was their only savings for old age, and they were willing to sell it to save me. This unconditional sacrifice was the complete opposite of the calculating exploitation by Susan Peterson's family. I wiped my tears and took my father's calloused hand. Dad, Mom, don't do that. I won't let you sell the land. I am capable of solving this problem myself. I've already filed a police report. I will make them pay for everything they've done. I will get my money back, and my honor too. It's enough for me that you are just here and support me. Father looked at me with pride in his eyes and clapped me on the shoulder. That's right. That's my daughter. Go for it. I support you wholeheartedly. If you need anything, just say the word. I wasn't afraid in the war, and I don't consider these small-time scammers to be real people. We can't let them laugh at us. My father's words gave me strength. I was no longer alone. I had a real family behind me, people who loved me unconditionally. With such a reliable rear guard, I was confident that the end for David's family and those who tried to destroy me was very near. After the police accepted my report, David was immediately summoned for questioning. He probably didn't expect me to dare to take such a decisive step. He always considered me a woman who valued her reputation and feared gossip, and therefore would silently endure everything to maintain the appearance of a happy family. But he was terribly mistaken. When a person is cornered, honor becomes more important than survival and justice. 3 days after the first interrogation, I learned that David had been hospitalized with tranquilizer poisoning. Susan Peterson immediately spread this news everywhere, from relatives in the countryside to our mutual friends. She sobbed and cried that this evil daughter-in-law had driven her husband to despair, and he had tried to commit suicide to prove his innocence. I knew David's character well. He was the biggest coward I had ever met. A man who was afraid even of injections would never decide on suicide. This was a ridiculous spectacle, designed to evoke pity in me and make me withdraw the complaint. I went to the hospital with my lawyer, Andrew, not to show sympathy, but to watch their performance. Already in the hallway, I heard Susan Peterson's loud wails. She was sitting on the floor in front of the ward door, disheveled, and seeing me, she lunged at me with the intention of tearing at my hair. "You killed my son, Marina. You drove him to this. Are you satisfied? If anything happens to him, I'll make you answer." I retreated behind Andrew and the 2 security guards we had brought with us. I looked coldly at my mother-in-law and calmly but firmly said, "What did the doctor say, Susan Peterson? How many pills did he take? Which ones?" As far as I know, he took only 5 mild sleeping pills. In such cases, a stomach pump is enough, and he'll recover. Don't create a circus here. You're disturbing other patients. Susan Peterson froze. Her face turned crimson from being exposed. It was obvious that she knew perfectly well that her son was just putting on an act. David lay in the ward with his eyes closed, but I saw his fingers twitching. Medical instruments showed an absolutely normal heart rhythm. I did not enter the ward. I placed a bouquet of bright yellow carnations, which I had prepared in advance, on a chair in the hallway and put a card in it. I spoke loudly enough for the one pretending to sleep to hear me. "David, I know you hear everything. No need to put on this childish act for me. You are a man. You should be able to take responsibility for your actions. Don't be a coward. Don't hide behind threats of suicide. I brought these flowers to wish you a speedy recovery. Take care of your health. You'll need it to serve your time in prison." Having said this, I turned and left. My mother-in-law's curses echoed behind me, but I paid them no mind. I knew David was scared. He understood that I had become completely indifferent to all his emotional manipulations. This failed suicide spectacle only worsened his position in the eyes of the investigation. The case of the daughter-in-law accusing her husband's family of fraud became a central media topic. My resolve and transparency attracted the attention of a national television channel. The editorial team of the Truth and Justice program invited me to participate in a talk show as a main guest to share my story and warn other women about financial risks in marriage. At first, I wanted to refuse, but Andrew advised me to accept. He explained that it was the best opportunity to speak out officially on an authoritative platform, finally dispel any remaining rumors, and create an image of a modern, legally savvy woman. This would be very advantageous for both the upcoming trial and my career. On the day of the filming, I chose an elegant dark blue business dress and applied subtle yet expressive makeup. Opposite me sat a well-known TV host and a reputable lawyer. Under the bright studio lights, I felt surprisingly calm. "Marina," the host began, "many believe that family problems should be resolved internally. Why didn't you try to do that, and instead pursued criminal prosecution?" I looked directly into the camera and answered clearly. "I have always valued family, but a family must be built on honesty and respect. When trust is used to commit organized fraud, when my hard work and my tears become a tool to satisfy bottomless greed, that is no longer family, that is a crime." I spoke out not only to reclaim my property, but also to protect my honor and send a signal to all women: be independent, be knowledgeable, and never sign documents without reading them, even if your own husband gives them to you. The lawyer, an expert, nodded approvingly. "Marina's actions are absolutely lawful. The law does not protect those who use marriage to seize a spouse's personal property or to burden them with debts without their consent. Your case is a valuable lesson in personal finance management. The program was a huge success. My confident, intelligent, and legally informed image made a strong impression on viewers. After the broadcast, my phone was flooded with congratulatory messages. My professional reputation soared. Headhunters began contacting me, offering CFO positions in other large companies with much better terms. I realized that when you dare to fight for the truth, the whole world comes to your side. From a victim, I had transformed into a person completely in control of the situation. Unwilling to sit idly by awaiting a verdict, David's family made a last desperate attempt. Susan Peterson sold all the gold she had hoarded for years and hired a notoriously controversial law firm that specialized in defending hopeless cases using less than clean methods. A few days after my television appearance, Andrew called me with amusing news. David's side had filed a counterclaim. In it, they asserted that the apartment in the Pinnacle Residences was marital property since it was acquired during the marriage, and that it being in my name was merely a formality. They demanded that the court divide the apartment in half or compel me to pay David half of its value. What was even more dangerous, they provided the court with a series of iMessage screenshots. In these fake messages, I allegedly agreed to buy the apartment for Ian and even promised to pay off the entire debt as a wedding gift. Their lawyer claimed that I knew about the loan and agreed to it, and now, due to personal animosity, had decided to accuse my husband of fraud. I looked at these fake pieces of evidence that Andrew sent me and couldn't help but laugh. The level of forgery was too primitive for someone who, like me, works with data daily. Did they really think a few carelessly photoshopped screenshots could fool the court? They're just trying to drag out the case, Andrew scoffed. But we'll show them the power of technology and the law. I've already filed a motion for an expert examination and requested detailed message records from the cell service provider's server. The absence of these messages in the operator's system will be the best proof of their forgery. We began gathering counter-evidence. With the help of specialists, I quickly proved that at the time those fake messages were supposedly sent, I was at a shareholder meeting, and my phone was turned off and held by my secretary. Geolocation data and call history from the operator perfectly matched my schedule, and no iMessages were sent to David's number at that time. On the day we presented our evidence, David's lawyer turned pale upon seeing the thick folder with the official response from the cell service provider. Their counterclaim was not only rejected, but became a knife they plunged into their own backs. Providing knowingly false evidence to the court is an aggravating circumstance in a criminal case. I looked at David, who sat with his head down next to his lawyer. I saw despair in his eyes. He had lost this game, and now there was no turning back. The court hearing for our divorce proceeded in a tense atmosphere. Although I wanted to end this marriage as soon as possible, property disputes and indications of criminal activity complicated everything. The judge began with a question about marital property. David, instructed by his lawyer, continued to insist that the apartment was joint property. Defendant Sokolov, the judge addressed him. You claim the apartment is joint property. Prove your financial contribution to its acquisition. What amount did you contribute, in cash or by transfer? When David stood up, sweat rolled down his forehead, despite the coolness in the room. He stammered, his eyes darting. Your Honor, I gave my wife cash, $500 every month for savings. She used that money to pay the interest. I immediately objected. Your Honor, the defendant's testimony is a lie. In 3 years of marriage, David did not give me a single dime for savings. I covered all family expenses. I have full bank statements proving that David's salary was immediately transferred to his mother, Susan Peterson's account, and spent on his personal needs. There were no transfers to my name. Andrew submitted David's bank statements, which we had requested through the court. Numbers don't lie. David's salary was much lower than mine, and most of it was withdrawn in cash from ATMs near his mother's home immediately after receiving it. The judge reviewed the documents, frowned, and looked at David. Defendant Sokolov, the evidence shows that you made no financial contribution to this property. Furthermore, the plaintiff Miller accuses you of deception to obtain her signature on the loan agreement. There are indications of a criminal offense here. After deliberation, the court rendered an important decision. Due to the fact that this divorce proceeding is connected to a property dispute, and the aforementioned property is material evidence in a criminal fraud case currently under investigation by law enforcement, the court orders a suspension of the consideration of property division until a verdict is rendered in the criminal case. Regarding the dissolution of the marriage, the court grants the mutual consent of the parties. Hearing this, David slumped. His plan to use the divorce to seize part of the apartment had completely failed. Not only did he not receive a single dime, but he also faced a real prison sentence. I left the courtroom feeling victorious. The suspension of property division was exactly what I wanted. Once a guilty verdict was rendered, the entire fraudulent transaction would be deemed void, and David would bear full legal responsibility. While my legal battle was heading for victory, a tragedy occurred that pushed my anger to its limits. That evening, Ian returned to his shabby rented room drunk, likely from despair and anger over being evicted from the luxury apartment, and also after overhearing Susan Peterson accuse Anna of giving me information. He unleashed all his fury on his wife. I was home when I received a call from an unknown number. It was a neighbor from their building. "Are you Anna's relative?" the woman asked fearfully. "Go to the hospital immediately. Her husband beat her unconscious. There was so much blood, the ambulance just took her away." My stomach clenched. I immediately called a taxi and rushed to the hospital. When I arrived, Anna was in intensive care after surgery. The doctor came out and sadly delivered the terrible news. Anna had multiple contusions, a broken rib, and most tragically, she was 3 months pregnant, and the baby could not be saved due to a severe blow to her abdomen. I stood, rooted to the spot. Tears streamed down my face from pity for this unfortunate woman and her unborn child. Ian was not a human, he was a beast. The next morning, Anna regained consciousness. Learning that she had lost her baby, she did not cry. Her eyes were wide open and lifelessly staring at the ceiling. I squeezed her hand tightly, not knowing how to comfort her. Suddenly, she turned to me, and a fire of hatred flashed in her eyes. "Marina Miller," she whispered. "I want to file a report. I want Ian to go to prison. He killed my baby." I nodded, squeezing her hand even tighter. "I will help you. We will make him pay for every drop of your child's blood." Right in the hospital room, with Andrew's help, Anna wrote a statement against Ian under charges of aggravated assault and causing termination of pregnancy. She also agreed to testify as a witness and tell the whole truth about her husband's family's fraudulent scheme, including how Susan Peterson and David discussed the plan to deceive with documents. Anna's testimony became the final, decisive element in the case. With evidence of assault and the consequences of fetal demise, Ian faced a very serious sentence. Anna's tragedy was a terrible price, but it marked the end of freedom for the criminals. Now both David and Ian were in the hands of justice. That morning, the sky over New York was gray and heavy. I stood by the coffee shop window opposite the dilapidated building where David's family lived. Andrew was beside me. His face was calm, but his gaze held a steely resolve. We had not come for a scandal. We had come to witness the triumph of justice. Exactly at 8 a.m., 2 police cars with blaring sirens burst into the quiet courtyard. The room door burst open, and several plainclothes officers stormed inside, reading an arrest and search warrant. I clearly saw the chaos unfolding inside. David, his face as white as a sheet, trembled as the charges of fraud and document forgery were read to him. He submissively extended his hands, and cold handcuffs clicked on his wrists. His usual feigned nonchalance disappeared, leaving only the image of a terrified criminal. In another corner of the room, Ian tried to resist, shouting and struggling as he was restrained. He was charged with aggravated assault, with the aggravating circumstance of causing termination of pregnancy. Susan Peterson ran after them, sobbing and pleading. She clutched at the officer's legs, screaming that her sons were innocent, that it was all engineered by her daughter-in-law, but received only resolute enforcement of the law in return. Seeing her 2 beloved sons, her pride and hope, led away into the police van, she couldn't take it. Her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed to the ground, losing consciousness. I watched the police car drive away. My soul felt empty, without any gloating. Only a quiet sadness. Sadness for human greed, for family ties distorted by money. "It's over," Andrew quietly said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Evil has been punished. Now you need to live for yourself." I turned and left the coffee shop, leaving behind the noisy crowd and the ruins of my former husband's family. A downpour began, washing the dust from the streets and carrying away all the pain that had accumulated in my soul over the past year. The storm in my personal life had subsided, and the storm at the company also came to an end. After a 2-week independent investigation, the board of directors issued an official conclusion regarding the accusations against me. On Monday morning, an emergency general meeting was convened. The CEO took the podium. His face radiated, unlike his usual sternness. He announced the audit results, which completely vindicated me. Not only were no signs of embezzlement found, but I was also praised for effective financial management that had saved the company millions of dollars. The room erupted in applause, but the most interesting part was yet to come. The CEO signaled to security. They approached Deputy CEO Steve directly. Victor Thompson loudly announced his dismissal and the transfer of his case to law enforcement. The reason? Receiving bribes and kickbacks from contractors, which led to serious financial losses for the company. The evidence I had secretly collected audio recordings, emails became the decisive weapon. Steve, with his head down, meekly left the room under the scornful glances of his colleagues. The position of Deputy CEO for Finance became vacant, and no one was better suited for the role than I. The order for my appointment was signed that same day. With a new salary and a bonus from the company, I quickly settled all matters concerning the sale of that cursed apartment. The bank cooperated, and I sold it for $1.4 million, which was just enough to pay off the entire debt. After all payments, I had about $20,000 left. I took this amount to Anna in the hospital. She had already been discharged and was preparing to go to her parents in the countryside. I handed her the savings passbook. She refused for a long time, but I insisted. "This is your startup capital," I said. "Open a small shop in the countryside and start a new life." She burst into tears and hugged me. 2 women, 2 victims of one cruel family, were now helping each other get back on their feet. A month before the trial, I was informed that David wanted to meet me in the detention center. At first, I wanted to refuse, but then decided to go to put a final end to it. The visitation room, a thick glass partition between us. David looked terrible. Shaved head, prison uniform, sunken eyes. He cried, repented, said he still loved me, and begged me to withdraw the complaint. I listened to him in silence, then picked up the phone and asked only one question. "David, that $170,000 you took by forging my signature, where is it?" He froze, his eyes darted around. He hadn't expected that question. He thought I would forget. His silence was the answer. He had not repented. He was still only thinking about money. I put down the receiver and left, without looking back. The trial went quickly. All the evidence was irrefutable. David and Ian pleaded guilty. The sentence was harsh. David Sokolov, 12 years in prison for felony fraud and document forgery. Ian Sokolov, 4 years in prison for aggravated assault leading to termination of pregnancy. Susan Sokolov, 2 years probation for complicity and harboring. My divorce was officially finalized. I was a free woman. A year passed. I bought a new, cozy apartment where I moved my parents. I often called Anna. She had opened her small shop, and business was going well. She said a good local man was courting her. One evening, Andrew called me. "Madam Deputy CEO, are you free tonight? I'd like to invite you to dinner. A new restaurant with a beautiful view has opened." His voice was warm and slightly shy. I smiled. This entire year, he had been by my side, supporting me. I realized I was ready to open my heart to new happiness. "All right, Mr. Parker. At 7 p.m., don't be late." I hung up and looked at my reflection. A mature, strong, radiant woman. The past was behind me, leaving only valuable lessons. I stood up to choose a beautiful dress. My real life was just beginning.